bring them up higher. Those bills did not pass. So I don't know if the commission wants to keep those consistent with campaign finance. If so, that's what they are. They're the same. Then, as Rebecca was saying, in subsection 4 there is, we reworded it a little, but if a public official knowingly fails to file, knowingly fails to report, or knowingly falsifies information, that's added, the falsification piece. And then that last sentence is also added. The commission may also collect all expenses incurred in investigating and collecting the fee for a knowing violation under the subsection. So those are the changes. I'll also note we looked at the schedule as far as notice for rulemaking. If the commission starts today, they can still be effective October 1st. If we wait until the next meeting, it'll be January 1st of next year.
So those were the changes that the commission asked us to make after the last meeting.
Any discussion on that? Seems to fit what we're looking for.
Question, Logan. You put the word knowingly in there. And so that has to go through issues.
Yeah.
And you need to say if an official fails to file or official knowingly fails to file, you're going to have to go an additional level of proof.
Yes.
So why would we want knowingly in there?
Sure. So if they just fail to file it, if they forgot, for instance, you'd go under that subsection 1. So 6 days, $25, 11 days, $50, thereafter $100. It would cap out with the $100. Now, what subsection 4 is trying to take into account is where somebody's maybe trying to hide it, where they're, I don't know what other example there would be, but they're not filing it for some other reason.
Intentionally.
Intentionally, yes. So then that goes up to the $500 fee.
So my second question is, generally on the penalty issue, what kind of pushback do you anticipate?
That's a good question. I mean, there is that train of thought that the commission can't enforce their rules, but the commission has never abided or agreed with that.
So this would make, this would allow perhaps for a decision on that issue if somebody challenges it.
Yes.
That's correct.
Well, I could see a situation where where we give them a notice, and then they, still after the notice, they don't file. Then that's the proof Murray's talking about. That they received a notice, now they knowingly don't file.
They're saying they purposely ignore.
Yeah, once they
Unless we
received
do.
a notice.
And that's
Yeah.
when we had the conversation about the amounts,
The
the
amounts,
fees,
yeah,
because they say it's 500 max.
Cost of doing business. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, all we can do is assess that kind of fine, and if they choose to ignore it or choose not to care, I guess that's something we can't prevent. I don't know if we should do anything else to change that. There's extremes But we do what's practical and then go from there.
There was a bill introduced in this session that would specifically allow people to accept gifts to travel out of state, provided you didn't talk about anything when you were there or on the way. But that bill was withdrawn, right?
It was.
And that was the only bill that would have done something like that, right?
Yes, it was not reintroduced. So where did the $500 fee come from? Where did that number come from? We just picked it?
That one was picked.
Yeah, we just picked it. It was a higher number. We thought it would have more impact. And that's why, because we thought the other number was too low. So.
Cindy, are you suggesting that that's too low?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it is.
It was before, but
Yeah.
then we raised it to 500.
Exactly. You know, and so the other aspect of it is like, leave it there, but to your comment, Logan, about our enforcement authority, it's just like, and that's what gets me upset or irks me. It's like, we're doing all of this with good intent and trying to create these systems with transparency, accountability, but there's no oomph to them. There's no, and so what, $500, yeah, I'll pay it. I don't have to tell you what I did or what I'm going for or whatever. And you find out a couple years later, oh, they made this big deal there and this happened and this happened.
Cynthia, was that a motion?
Well, I guess that's my frustration about, I don't know, sometimes it's like, let's just bite the bullet and do something. So it's like, if $500, which to me, I don't think is sufficient, okay? But I agree, and I know how we got to the 500, so I'm accepting it or acceptable to it. So if they do that, they still ignore whatever, then, okay, fine. Then our recourse is, well, we're going to publicize this somehow. Because again, and especially if we're talking about legislators, legislative body, elected officials, they should want to create their own checks and balances.
Wouldn't this be publicized anyways?
Well, I don't know. And I would want to publicize them, like somehow judges have done with people when they made them walk around with plaque boards. I did this a couple of cases, like, I can't remember what those cases were. I'm like, what heck? So it's like this public humiliation piece
Yeah,
to get them
some
to
judges have done that. and
to get them
I haven't done, I never did that.
to get people to understand that. Think about what you're doing and
Yeah.
the consequence, but especially for elected public people. I think the common citizen expects, okay, we've elected this person, these people, to have common sense, to have integrity, to have some ethical, moral standing.
Yeah,
And when
that's
it-
true.
And when we know, sorry, yeah.
And your motion,
How would I articulate that into a motion? I don't know.
Didn't we, when we talked about it last time, because we had, kind of, we're going in the same direction, you know, but what is the level that results in a change in behavior? So, I can't remember if our discussion turned to, well, let's try this and see if it's ignored, if it's, but we don't know that yet. We're intuitively, it's like, whatever, cost of doing business. So I mean, what lies before us, is that we can try it the way we set it up and the way we discussed it, or we can have a discussion now, entertain a motion for, should we raise that cost?
I agree with Cindy that there should be some kind of publication in the Tribune and in the Fargo Forum. Those are the two main newspapers in the state, I think, and then it could be picked up by other newspapers. I'm not necessarily looking at a bigger fine, up to 1,000, but the publication of the offense would seem to be a reasonable thing to do. Wouldn't have to be a front page banner headline, but it could be and I think just a small news blurb, not necessarily the small print ones where, you know what I'm talking
The
about.
legal notices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It may cost us a few bucks to do that, but I understand what you're doing.
Well, okay, so if I were to make a motion, I would make a motion to change the 500 to 5,000.
Oh, you're not fooling around.
No, I'm not, because, I'm sorry, it's, yeah. It's like, people need to pay attention and to do this, to do it in a good way, but they're not.
Mhm.
So here we are, and and again, to me, we're trying to do this nicely, North Dakota nicely, whatever, but I'm like, I also believe we were put here by the people to do what we're doing, and I think we need to do more and to do better. So I'm like,
Okay, let me ask, how often does this happen? Has it happened where we don't get compliance with the rules that we're talking about?
It's a very large question, Ron. Because are we talking about conflict rules? Are we talking about gift rules? I think we don't have enough data to say at this point.
Do we have any data? Do we have any instances where this has happened?
Well, for travel,
Yeah,
well, so there isn't a rule yet on travel, so we don't have any data on it yet. Right? Am I saying that
Yes.
accurately? We're not going to have any information on that.
No, and then for the other instances, the conflict rules, et cetera, well, it's one, are you getting a complaint on it? Two, what's not subject of a complaint that's essentially unreported conflicts? So it's hard to give an answer to that question.
There isn't so the only rule that's currently in place that has a dollar value attached to it is the gift rules. And so I don't think that's an equivalent. I guess the lobbying one does too. The revolving door, but that's a statute and that's a constitutional provision. So that's not a rule.
And it's not a filing rule either.
No, this is a completely new setup as to how we're doing this. So there is no,
So
Yes.
in that same vein, if you look at subsection 5, when we're talking to alternatives to the complaint process, well, a filing violation, let's call it that for purposes of discussion, may not need a full-blown complaint investigation. So this is really modeled after how the Secretary of State assesses penalties for campaign finance. So that's why you see by civil action or by assignment to a collection agency in there as well. But there's alternative methods to collecting that fee short of the complaint process and going through that lengthy process.
Cindy, we could also change it. So right now it says the commission may charge and collect a $500 fee. we could change it and say may charge and collect up to whatever number you pick. So that does give a level of discretion.
Like that. So I'm gonna make the motion to change that wording to, Rebecca just said it, up to $5,000. We may, but,
So it says the commission may charge and collect
up to,
up to $5,000. Is that how you would word it?
Pay $5,000.
And your motion is to approve it as with that language,
yes,
the entire.
yes, yes.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
We'll add that it may be more than that because we did, Murray's suggestion last time, add the expenses incurred to collect it and investigate it, so maybe $5,000 plus. if you have a- Fees.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Before we vote? Okay, Alicia, call roll, please.
Dean Henderson,
Aye.
Cynthia Lindquist,
I,
Ward Kozer,
Aye.
Ron Goodman,
Aye.
Murray Stagsby.
Motion carried. So do we still have to have a motion?
No, it was, the entire motion has changed. It was-
Oh, okay, so,
the draft.
so we're still, so we're actually
Done with it.
done with it, so Rebecca and Logan have their marching orders to start the rulemaking process. Okay, all right,
That's correct.
all right. Okay, then the next item, Executive Director Evaluation Salary Discussion. So when we did this last time, Paul kind of led us through the categories, and we were open for discussion on, you can see what we did last time. There wasn't much discussion because really, as I recall, last year's discussion with Paul, leading it, every time we asked a question, is there any reason not to choose?
Aye.
Yes, significantly above standard. So I guess I asked the same question this time. So we'll go through each one, but communication with the executive director and commission members, that rating. And I certainly have been, I think it's outstanding. So I'd recommend keeping a 5 for that. Any discussion, any?
It's good to me. Let's see, these didn't print off quite.
Next one, so I'll add the comments, but I started with that one. You know, and certainly anyone can suggest, but for comments, I just said Rebecca does an outstanding job. I didn't go to quite the length that I did this last night, that Paul did. I'll expand, but Rebecca, for my note to start this, Rebecca does an outstanding job in communicating with commission members those items that are necessary for commission members to do our work. She developed a memo for each meeting, which is a tremendous help to commissioners to make the meetings much more efficient. That's kind of the beginning of those comments.
Good.
So, and certainly I'll take any additional comments.
No, that memo is very important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that all of us, it's just nice to have that. And not to denigrate Dave, but Dave didn't do that. And so we didn't get that kind of guidance that we get from
And it's a
Rebecca.
lot of work. Rebecca puts a lot of work, and I suppose Alicia, I don't know, well,
And Logan and Alicia.
so all you guys put a lot of work into that. So what we see is the end result of a lot of work, and it makes our job easier.
Yeah, it does.
So I'll do a better job of putting the comments in there. But that is truly a significant contribution to how we can accomplish our business.
And another important thing of that memo is that we are provided with a script of a motion
Right.
so that I've been to way too many meetings when somebody says something and another person will say, I move whatever that person said.
Yeah.
And it leaves it up to the secretary then to try to understand what happened. And a script is really useful to make sure there are no errors in the minutes because they're a public document.
I appreciate that.
I know I'm not a commissioner, but I want to add that it's very helpful for me for my minutes too to use her memo. It helps the length of time they would normally take, so I tell her all the time, I appreciate
Yep.
your memo.
Every month.
Yeah, so I guess bottom line is, as commissioners, we recognize the effort that goes into that. And we sincerely appreciate because of how much it helps us to do the job and how much it helps our meetings. It truly is an outstanding addition to the efforts here.
I wrote comments out too, but kind of parallels it. I use different words.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give this to Alicia at the end.
Okay.
You said it more articulately.
Okay, next one is communication with others. So as we think about this, of course, it goes without saying, I think that's all outstanding, but I started this with, I think Rebecca's leadership dedication has never been demonstrated more than during this legislative session. So we've all, I think, we've seen some of the testimony we've been able to take. Sometimes, I know, Murray, you've been present for some, I've been the present for one? Can't even remember now.
Online.
But, so that's where we have a clear demonstration of her skills and abilities. So I'm not at all shy about rating her outstanding in every one of those questions. Because she demonstrated all for 4 months. And our staff did. Logan responded. Alicia, your reputation with the numbers, it's like, we have a great team. And thanks to Rebecca's leadership. So 5 across the board there.
Dave, my perception is too, is that in some of the legislative hearings, the questions weren't necessarily softball-friendly questions. And were responded without getting flustered or upset or angry. Just a very professional response.
Professional response, professional communications, despite the, like you said, hardball, what's another term, that the stuff they were throwing at you.
Hostility? There was some.
Yeah, there was some, true. So, I mean, we all saw it, you handled that very well.
I think we also need to mention the education materials, the website,
Yeah,
where the public generally, I think, has the first encounter or contact with us. It's all beautifully, not just beautifully, it's skillfully done and articulated. And that takes leadership to do those, and those materials are good. They're easy to find.
Yeah.
They're fun to watch. I mean, you get to the point.
Cindy, that's a lot of Alicia and Logan in the website. Alicia makes it very easy to do.
I printed it off last night. It's all not quite formatted.
Oh.
So, I mean,
Dave, I'm wondering if there's something with your printer.
could be. It's not exactly top of the line. So. Tend to run things into the ground. So this printer I've had for many years. And it still works. Not sure why. It's wireless. And I hit print and it prints. So I'm happy. The first time it doesn't print, I'm going to have a problem. So. Okay, commission goals and objectives. Again, it's kind of a redundant, but I mean, there's nothing other than outstanding in any of Rebecca's actions. And I put in here just a note so I don't forget. Rebecca always informs the chair and the commission of the goals and objectives that are achieved, are looking to be achieved, and what's for the future. Of course, some of that's in the memo, but she always keeps us on track. So, and Logan and Alicia the same way, but.
I also appreciate, I think she always ties it, this topic, or hey, that fits under this strategic piece here or that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So making those connections. To the
She
work.
even calls me in Las Vegas. She's done that a couple of times.
I have.
Of course, she don't know that I'm there until I answer the phone.
We covered commission goals and objectives. Yeah, I think we covered that all. Outstanding. Direction and coordination of office tasks. I mean.
That's hard for us to judge, but I would assume.
Well, we have a great team, so I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's proof. I mean, the memo is a demonstration of what the team can do together. And we saw, I mean, we all observed that Logan stepped up for testimony, Alicia had her numbers, and Rebecca led the way. So, I mean, there's not a weak link in the bunch. So it's like, so direction, coordination of office tasks is, if you look at the questions there, I mean, all outstanding. It's like, it's just clearly outstanding.
I also wrote for that one that Rebecca has built up the various systems needed to operate the functions that we do, the pieces that we do, the online aspect of the tech piece of it, but also the various processes, I think, are clearly articulated. People can go to it, oh, this is how this works and that. Then along with that, the building of relationships that we need as a commission, but then the staff need also. Good example was Jill coming yesterday, introduced to us and that, so yeah. And then the other piece on that was, and always within budget. I mean, are mindful, they always tell us exactly where we are, so that, yeah. I think it's so wonderful to be the North Dakota Ethics Commission and to be, as a commissioner, to be able to say, check out our website, look here,
Yeah.
look there.
yeah.
The accountability, to me, we're as transparent as we can be, as again, as we've learned this and what we're building and developing.
Especially when you can point to like, I don't know if I would ever get a question, I would say, kind of like in the military, remember when we used to say like, did you read the or like, did you look at our website? Frequently asked question, look at the FAQ site, look at the, you know, I just tell them, take a look at the website. But it's just that good, and frequently asked questions, it's just, I think I told you all that I did look at it once and clicked on something, well, what about this part? So when I clicked on one question, the answer, what about this? Well, it led me to the other piece as well. So that it's very well done. So it's just, I'm kind of in awe, like, wow. Everything I thought of, like, oh, it's here. Like, it's all in there. So, very well done. So the overall rating is outstanding. So the job-related strengths, my first note here is just simply, Rebecca has tremendous resilience and has the ability to adjust and adapt according to the personalities. And I won't say what I had in parentheses. And their particular goals, which regularly did not coincide with the commission. And it's probably a stronger word we can use, that they never coincided with the commission. So,
One thing that bothers me though is every time I click on it, Alicia's picture shows up. Oh, there it is again.
it could be worse, Ron, it could be your picture.
That's true.
So I guess to sum it up, my intention is that all outstanding in all these questions, I will work on the comments. I have some started, but like I said, I use the legislative process to, I mean, last time we were talking about it and it was, you know, somewhat intuitive and like it was demonstrated on a monthly basis. Here, it was demonstrated every day. And then in a, what the movie's called, the crucible and the legislative process. And I don't think I've done justice, I mean, all outstanding work, but in my comments, I don't think I've mentioned all the extra hours put into that as they learned of questions from the legislators and then developed responses overnight. So I guess I want to recognize that, and I'm appreciative is not the right word, but the amount of effort you guys put into this stuff during the legislative session is truly outstanding. I mean, I don't know if there are other words that can cover the work you guys did during this legislative session, which wasn't always friendly.
What I've observed just since I've been back for the past month is that Rebecca has a very good working relationship with the Secretary of State, and just on a first name collegial basis, and also has the ability to essentially walk in the House Majority Leader's office or Senate Majority Leader's office and on a first name basis. You're on a first name basis with Senator Hogue, it's Senator, and with
Yeah.
Representative before, it's representative, but it is on a first name basis, and that's really a good. It establishes that what we need, that collegiality with key players.
And it establishes the credibility, because when they ask Rebecca or any of our staff a question, they know we'll get an answer right away, and it is spot on. It's accurate. Sometimes, you know, Rebecca, the question you get and Logan have to be researched more, so they know that's what'll happen. that effort we put forth to research it. And when the legislative body, when those legislators ask a question, they will get a researched, incredible answer. There's no smoke. So,
Which we have been told that perhaps is our biggest downfall, that we are too open, too honest, and too logical.
We'll take those, right?
I took the criticism.
we'll take that. So any other discussion on? I don't remember how we did, what we have to do for the salary piece.
Well, I think you missed leadership and staff
Did I
relations.
miss one of them? Like I said, when I printed these off last night, I didn't pay attention to some of these.
There's no page numbers on these, which we just identified and Alicia will fix.
What do you think I missed?
Leadership and staff relations.
Well, there, yeah. The bottom of the page and the rest of it's on the other page. So those are all outstanding. So I think that's the one. I thought that's where I had I started my comment with Rebecca's leadership ability has never been more clearly demonstrated than during this legislative session. Rebecca's ability to develop testimony and working with legislators was truly a wonder to behold. She worked along with her staff late into the night and on weekends to further the goals of the commission, despite the opposition that came from certain legislators. Rebecca did an outstanding job of keeping the chair and the commission informed of challenges and communications as they occurred. Any other comments from anyone? I mean, that's what, again, the session really provided a menu where we could see really how good our people are. Like, it was just, every time you watch something, it was like a demonstration of just how good our staff is.
So I wrote, Rebecca is a professional team builder and leader who is aware, actually, I wrote conscious. Why did I put conscious? I know you're conscious. Conscious. So I changed it to aware of staff strengths and needs to guide them appropriately. So essentially, you're a very strong team. If you don't have a good leader, you're not going to be a good team. So, yeah.
I have a question about the next, the biennium, going to COBO. But are there other leadership and educational opportunities? This is, like you said, a very niche
Very,
situation, but are there other learning opportunities where you can learn something and bring it back? And so that you can learn something from experiences that others may have had, and maybe good experiences, bad experiences, so that you can bring that back. Do you have any suggestions for that?
so Paul has asked this question before. In fact, I think he asked it last year or the year before. And there is very few in the ethics arena, right? And I think the reason is because everybody is so different. But once we get into campaign finance, campaign disclosure, there is more opportunities in that area,
Especially at COBO.
especially at COBO, but there are other offshoots of that, more specifically continuing education on those issues. And so, unfortunately, our budget doesn't have a ton of money for me to be traveling to do those things. But one of the places that I think I get a lot of resources from, or education from, is the other executive directors of other ethics commissions. So there's 3 that I contact regularly, and that's Ohio. His name is Paul Nick. The reason I reach out to him is because he's been doing it for 35 years. So I'm like, there's nothing that he hasn't seen, right?
And still there.
And he's still there. So he's a good resource. Now, they're not a constitutional ethics commission, so they're structured a little bit different. They also don't have a supermajority of one party, so their political environment is a little bit different. But when we, he's a good first resource to bounce something off of. Has this ever happened? He's also very responsive. They're adequately staffed, so he has the ability to respond quickly. The other one is the executive director in Hawaii. He's newer, but he has years and years of history behind him. And then also Jeremy with the New Mexico Ethics Commission, who's kind of our sister ethics commission. And those are the three that I bounce things off of on I don't want to say regular basis, because I think I talked to Jeremy in March maybe, or February. But if there's something that comes up, those are who I go to and say, hey, let's talk about this. We've also had discussions with the general counsel for the Texas Ethics Commission. I have never spoke with the executive director there, but that group as well. But again, those are all individuals from Kogel, right? That I initially met at Kogel and then have continued to maintain relationships with. And a lot of it comes down to, I look at Ohio and Hawaii because they've been doing it for a long time. And New Mexico, because they're in a similar situation to us as to when they were formed.
Have you used Minnesota at all?
No, Minnesota is set up much differently and they've had a lot of changes and they are more limited than the North Dakota Ethics Commission. So, and their office has changed in scope and enforcement. And now they've broken it up and they have election people and they have campaign finance offices. So it's a much different structure. It's not easily translatable to North Dakota.
Isn't that something, like their judges and their judicial leadership is very responsive to the judges. And, I went to a couple seminars there as a judge and it was very good, but, it's funny how it's so similar there, but different as far as ethics is concerned.
Yep. So Marie, to answer your question in full, I think that there are some opportunities. There's some ethics institutes at certain universities that offer things. Most of it is online. But I think for me, one of my goals for this coming session is a very practical goal, and that is to improve the complaint process. And that was on my goal last year. And we attempted one way, right? We attempted the legislation, the collaborative approach, and that didn't work. We weren't successful. So now we're going to have to get creative.
And a follow-up question is that related to ethics, there is campaign finance ethics, complaint ethics, there are different.
Open record, yes.
And so after the legislative session, are you considering any sit-down sessions with legislators individually or groups of legislators to talk what happened here and what are you thinking about next year? Because there were 16 ethics-related bills introduced. 2 were withdrawn, that left 14. 10 were killed. And so I'm still trying to figure out, and many of those had to do with campaign finance.
Yes.
So why were they introduced and why were they killed?
Yep.
And so there seems to be a group of legislators who are interested in ethics and who introduced the bill. And there are other group of legislators who are not supportive of that. And they're all in a way affect what the Ethics Commission does.
Yep.
Are you contemplating any after-action review with the legislator on?
Debriefing.
Yes.
Debriefing. So we're starting tomorrow with the Secretary of State.
Okay.
So we're going to start with his team to talk specifically about 1377. And I always forget it, 2156, right? 2156 to see what happened. And then I'd like to touch base with the legislators who were proponents of that. Kristen Roars, Sean Cleary, Emily O'Brien. But then, I think I already told you this last week, then we also need to talk to those who were vocally against it. Ben Koppelman, Vicki Steiner, those were two that came to mind specifically. So yes, Murray, those are.
And what's the role of the Secretary of State and the Ethics Commission in that situation? Right?
Yep. Yeah.
Because there seems to be a significant amount of interest in the ethical issues related to campaign finance
There
and
is.
campaigning and ethics.
Yes.
of campaigning, and use of AI and making it interesting.
Do we want to mention the AG's office?
That we will continue to work as best we can in a professional manner with their office.
We're part of the evaluation forum.
Well, no, I was just commenting based on the discussion, follow up to the
Oh, yeah.
legislative session and then.
So were the Secretary of State bills that he took forward, were they successful?
Well, some were, but some were not. And the big one was 1377 that created quite a bit of debate on the last night of session.
That's the one.
What was that? 1377. I thought 1277 was,
But 1377 came in one version and was
Came out.
completely changed.
yeah, it was Hogos. Yep. But there was another Senate corresponding bill that brought by Senator Cleary. So. Does that answer your question, Murray?
Yeah, because one of the questions has to do with your goals for the next year and, or on here, the goals for the next year, relationships with others, and that's why I asked the question.
So I think, so last year I articulated for the commission what my goals were for last year, and they're on the review form from last year. And this year, still focusing in ensuring that we have that complaint process fixed is probably a number one practical goal. The second one is developing that case management system. It's other very practical, and coming up with measurables for how we actually gauge if we are moving in the right direction on our strategic plan. So I think me giving myself the ability or the space maybe to step back and look at our strategic plan, which I try to do, but I think not being in the weeds so much, or as I tell Alicia and Logan, not reacting and being proactive with our strategic plan. That's the second goal, or kind of three goals in one. And then I also think that before we go into next legislative session, developing even stronger relationships with the executive branch and the legislative branch has to be paramount. We came in with a very collaborative approach to legislative session. And while it may not have been entirely successful, I think that it's a good approach, because when you can build consensus, you generally get a better outcome. So I also want to add that all of the things that you guys spoke about is because not just me by any means, but because we have an amazing team with Logan and Alicia, and they are very, I think that Jill used the word engaged yesterday, and point, we have very engaged individuals. Logan comes some days with a great idea at 8 o'clock in the morning that he thought about at 11 o'clock the night before. And it's a eureka moment, and it's very great. And Alicia has our operations down to a T, and I trust that. She's very good at what she does. So we would not be where we are without team members who are engaged and outstanding and believe in the mission of the commission. So.
Kurt, okay, I mean, we can see it's demonstrated every time we meet, and especially during legislative session, that it's a great team. It's a great team. I guess maybe we're fortunate. They weren't fortunate in that the legislative session was around, but that clearly demonstrated to us that, I mean, you can't have a better vehicle to see just how good your team is. And watch your team do battle in the crucible of the legislature. So, and build the relationships and do the things in the hallways that's in between the times of testimony. So, and then of course, keeping the chair informed of what was going on there and the challenges, and yeah, there were nothing but challenges, so. Okay, so what do I have left to do in this part, Rebecca?
I'd probably rather have Logan tell you guys what to do.
Okay, Logan, what do I have left to do in that?
Well, I believe you have to approve the evaluation, but also the legislative. The legislative
Do we have to approve that?
raise, yes, you have to approve that.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the executive director's evaluation as we discussed.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? The only discussion I would add is like clearly outstanding. I don't think I can say that enough. So. Okay, Alicia, call the roll, vote, please.
Dave Anderson,
Aye.
Cynthia Lindquist,
I,
Ward Kozer,
Aye.
Ron Goodman,
Aye.
Murray Sagsby.
Motion carried. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve of the salary increase at the, how'd you word that, Logan?
It's a 3% legislative.
legislature.
Legislature, okay.
Is that for just Rebecca or Logan and Alicia also? Because they're subject to that too, I
But
believe.
Rebecca takes care of that. All we have to do is
Okay.
approve Rebecca's.
I'll move that we approve her salary increase.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay. Alicia, please call the roll.
Dave Anderson,
Aye.
Cynthia Lindquist,
I,
Ward Kozer,
Aye.
Ron Goodman,
Aye.
Murray Sagsby.
Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, you know, we talked earlier in our meeting yesterday about performance bonuses that we, if I remember right, we used to authorize. Would that be appropriate
so,
with funding that we have carrying over to use some of that for performance bonus after what the evaluation turned out?
Lord, I was gonna make a motion, or I will make a motion to provide Rebecca Binstock, Executive Director of the North Dakota Ethics Commission, the performance bonus of $1,500 and also the retention bonus for 1 month's salary.
I will second that.
I don't know if we have that.
Well, and I'm not, is that how she explained it?
It is, however, we don't have funds to cover 1 month's salary left over for,
I think we only have the funds for the 1,500 at this point.
The reality.
you could do it for less. There's funds, there's just not enough to cover 1 month's salary.
Cover whatever the budget can cover up to 1 month's salary.
Take it
Zero
down to
balance.
zero.
Well, and for me, in my motion, I want it on record. Because then I know we're in this biennium, July 1 starts the new one. So could we take it now and the rest for the next biennium?
Or could you do up to that 1 month salary, depending on the availability of funds?
Okay, is that better?
I would say that's better. We can't dig in a next biennium because every dollar literally is assigned somewhere, so that can't. But I would say if you did a motion for any excess for what's going to be left,
We're talking only this biennium, right,
right,
Cynthia? So,
when, what I'm saying, yeah.
so basically our goal would be to use up, you always have a little bit of a balance left, it's not much, but up to the amount that funds allow.
Okay,
But we're only talking about Rebecca here, right?
yeah, because she takes care of them and she has. From my understanding is she has.
We're not taking away the funds for her ability to do that, are we?
So
Are we, Rebecca?
No, those are earmarked already.
Okay,
what I would suggest is that you act on the performance bonus, but then give Alicia, myself, maybe Cindy, an opportunity to touch base with Jill on the other piece of it, and then we can revisit that in June, because that's the last month of the biennium.
okay.
Okay,
If that
Yeah,
makes
and maybe
sense.
have a better sense next month of where we're sitting.
okay.
You still want to make a motion on the performance bonus,
Yes.
okay?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. call the vote, please.
Dave Anderson,
Aye.
Cynthia Lindquist,
Aye.
Ward Kozer,
Aye.
Ron Goodman,
Aye.
Murray Sexton.
Motion carried.
So then
Okay,
we'll
thanks
do-
for that, Cindy.
I'll do another motion to work with the staff for consideration of the retention bonus based on appropriations or budget or funding.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Thanks for that effort, Cindy. So, Alicia, call the roll, please.
Dave Anderson,
Aye.
Cynthia Lindquist,
Aye.
Ward Kozer,
Aye.
Ron Goodman,
Aye.
Murray Sexton.
Aye.
Motion carried. Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll visit with Alicia here, 'cause some notes I will take so I can make comments, then I'll turn it all into you.
Yeah, and then I just want to make sure I understand. So last year I took all of the comments, whether or not they were said or written, and compiled them. And then Paul looked over the whole thing and signed it. So I just want clarity that that's what you'd like me to do.
So should,
Yeah, okay, so do that stuff I was gonna take home to do tonight.
Yeah,
Done.
everyone make them all and compile them all.
she might be able to
Done.
read, she might be able to read my handwriting better too.
I remember now, that's what we did, we turned it all in.
Yep, and then you review a final one with all the comments and then sign
Okay.
it.
I'll have to staple mine together, because I got.
I suggest a 10-minute break.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna do that for sure, so. All right, let's do a 10-minute break, please. We stand recessed.
I feel like we should get you a gavel, Dave.